What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Top Dogs podcast here on the Field of 68 Media Network. My name is Rob Doster, and I am back from Peach Gym where I had a chance to do what you always do at these recruiting events. Sit there, watch a bunch of kids play basketball, talk to a bunch of people in and around the game, whether it's coaches, whether it's scouts, whether it's other media members, whether it's the recruiting gurus that cover this stuff 24/7, or if it's just people in and around the sport of basketball. And I got a little bit of a feel for what's happening with the recruiting on a national landscape, and I also got a chance to get eyes on some of the players that I do believe UConn is going to be recruiting over the course of the next 2, 3, 4 months as they try to land themselves some commitments here in the late summer, early fall before the season starts. So before we get into the meat of this, please rate, review, subscribe to this podcast. Anywhere that you listen to podcasts or watch podcasts, all of that interaction really does help with the almighty algorithm, which is how all of us pay the bills. So if you could throw me a like, throw me a comment, throw me a review, all of that stuff is very much appreciated, truly. So before we get into the actual players that they are going after, I want to talk a little bit just for my own sanity about what the roster structure would look like, right? Heading into the season, 12 scholarships are filled. There are four what I would call guards, four what I will call wings, and five wings and three bigs. The backcourt, Sandiar, Aiden Mahaney, Solo Ball, and Ahmad Noel. Wings, Alex Caravan, Jalen Stewart, Liam McNeely, Jaden Ross, and Isaiah Abraham. And then bigs, obviously, Samson Johnson, Terrace Reed, and Yusuf Samgare. Hassan Diar and Samson Johnson are gone. They're going to be out at eligibility after this season. Alex Caravan, I would be very surprised if he ended up coming back again for another year. He turned down, well, I don't want to say he turned down, but there were offers and teams that were saying they thought that his market value, if he had stayed in the draft, would have been somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 years, 3 year kind of a contract. That's not saying 3 years guaranteed. That's not saying he would have gotten what Bronny James would have gotten. But that is saying that he probably would have been able to make at least $1 million guaranteed next season if he had stayed in the draft. And he turned that down to come back and try to win a three-peat. And based off of what I think and I hope and I expect his production will be next season and kind of the way that the things have shaken out for him, I do believe that he is probably gone after this year. And then I would say both Jalen Stewart and Liam McNeely are being mocked in first round drafts for first round of the 2025 mock drafts. I think McNeely, reasons why, kind of obvious, top 10 recruit, coming to fill the void that was left by two pros in Steph Castle and or Cam Spencer. And, whenever you are a top 10, top 15 kind of recruit in a year where the recruiting classes are as good as they've been, then I do think that it's easy to kind of say like there's a real chance he ends up being a one and done. And with Jalen Stewart, I think people are just kind of projecting the breakout. We'll see if that ends up playing out. We'll see what that ends up turning into. But I would say for the purposes of this exercise, I am just going to just kind of say, since they are both being mocked in first rounds, let's just kind of work off the assumption that one or both of them will be gone next year. So I do think that what you're looking at, I think you have coming back, or at least know you have to prevent from losing in the portal, would be in the backcourt, Aiden Mahaney, Solo Ball, and Ahmad Noel. On the wings, it would be Jaden Ross and Isaiah Abraham. And up front, it would be Terrace Reed and Yusuf Samgare. Now, the model that we've seen UConn work with the last couple of seasons has essentially been try to add a couple of guards, try to add a couple of wings, and try to add a big. Generally speaking, it's been maybe get two transfers and three freshmen. Last year, it was one transfer and five freshmen. The year before that, it was more transfers than it was freshmen. But I think in an ideal world, you're getting two guards, two wings, and a big. Maybe specifically with the way that this roster would shake out, you would want one guard and three wings. But more or less, you want four perimeter players, multiple of whom can be those versatile kind of 2 through 4 swing pieces, and a big. Some of them transfers, some of them freshmen. All of that's going to kind of be dependent on how the season plays out. But that's the structure of what you're looking at, right? And I think more or less that's kind of what you can predict happening for next season when this roster needs to get built and refreshed again. It's not guaranteed. Obviously, you don't know what's going to happen. We're predicting a breakout from Jalen Stewart. Maybe it ends up being Solo Ball as the one that has the big sophomore season. Maybe Liam McNeely doesn't end up being as good as people think, and he can kind of end up being a 2 to 3 year guy. I don't know. It's all projection. It's all stuff that we're kind of guessing at this point. But for the structures, again, of this exercise, we're thinking 2 guards, 2 wings, and a big man that they're going to have to bring in. So that's kind of where we're at with this. I think it's also worth noting at this point that it is very difficult to read the tea leaves in the class of 2025. Like, I think a lot of people, freshmen, incoming freshmen, juniors in high school, the people around the juniors in high school, AAU coaches, AAU parents, all that kind of stuff. They saw what someone like a Coleman Hawkins got when he came back from the draft and there wasn't a lot of players available and there was a lot of NIL money available and he was able to go out and get multiple millions with a crooked number in front, right? 2 commas with a crooked number is what Coleman Hawkins is reported to have gotten from Kansas State. I think you look at what Great Osibor got reportedly from Washington, which is a couple of million to go play this season. I think people have figured out the value of waiting and the value of supply and demand and the importance of kind of saying, look, there aren't a lot of players left to come supplement your roster. Why don't you pay me that bag, that leftover NIL funds that you have? You know, you're not, what else are you going to do with that budget? You got to spend it somewhere. Looking at the way that the class of 2025 is currently shaken out, there is one top 20 player that has committed to a program, and that is the guy that is number 20 in the 24/7 Sports Top 100, Sadiq White, committed to Syracuse. None of the top 19 guys in the current 24/7 Top 100 have committed anywhere. 6 of the top 50 have committed, which means that you haven't seen the dominoes kind of fall, right? Usually the way it works is, I'm just going to throw some numbers out there. Let's just say there's like 6 programs that are recruiting the top 8 point guards in the country, right? One of them commits to Kansas, and then another one of them ends up committing to UConn, and then someone else commits to Auburn, and then all of a sudden those other guys see that these spots are getting taken up, so they commit, right? And then you're left with a couple of point guards that are uh, without a seat in the musical chairs in the way that it kind of plays out. So then you have them looking at other programs. You have some other programs reaching up to try to get them, thinking they have a chance to get them because other spots have been filled. And the way when all of that stuff kind of shakes out, you can kind of figure out and you can kind of hear the rumors and you hear the scuttlebutt and you can kind of figure out how some of this stuff is going to end up playing out. You can connect some dots, the dominoes end up falling. Usually that happens a little bit earlier in the process. And right now, this summer, it's it's delayed. Like it's not moving at the same rate that we're used to. I think some of that is because guys have seen the value of waiting until universities and programs and collectors are scrambling. I think a lot of that is because when coaching staffs are out recruiting and out trying to divvy up their expenditure for a year, they're focusing a lot more on the transfer market in the spring than they were on some of these kids. A lot of times you see players commit in the spring. I think the freshman recruiting has been postponed. And I also think it's worth noting that the value of putting together a crop of freshmen has kind of been diluted a little bit in a sense. It's not as important to be able to put together an elite class of freshmen as it is to be able to go out and put together an elite crop of transfers and keep some of those freshmen around, right? The priority is now being able to get 21 and 22-year-olds, or it will be. It's been 23 and 24-year-olds. It will be going forward to get these upperclassmen transfers from lower levels. That will be more important than kind of getting these freshmen. But smart programs like UConn, programs like Kansas, programs that value player development and that value continuity and culture, we're going to keep going out and getting these guys. It's just the timeline has been pushed back and it's been a little bit more difficult to project than it has been in the past. So there have been other years where you can kind of sit here in a situation like this and I can say, this is who they're targeting. This is who my guess is who they'll end up getting. It's not as easy right now. So I have a little bit of a feel for who this staff likes. I have a little bit of a feel for like where you can kind of guess some of these players are going to go, but I don't feel comfortable right now uh, saying too much more than kind of what I'm going to say on this podcast. So it's a weird time when it comes to recruiting. It's a weird time in college basketball. There's a lot of transitional elements, and it's different than it's been in the past. So I'm trying to figure out how to work through all this as well. Um, Before we get into the recruits, one other note I just want to say, like, I've had people ask about AJ DeBonsa. He is the top player in the class of 2025. He is from Brockton, Massachusetts. Another New England native that does not seem like he's going to end up going to UConn the same way that Cooper Flagg did not end up going to UConn. Um, but there's a very important difference there. I think Cooper Flagg would have been a perfect fit for what UConn's culture is and the way that they want to play and their style and the mentality and a fit for that coaching staff and that everything about Cooper Flagg would work within the UConn system, right? I think he's a very good defender. He's a versatile player. He's smart. He makes shots. He doesn't need the ball to be successful. He cares about defense. He cares about winning. He's kind of like a supercharged Steph Castle. He's a little bit bigger. He's probably a better shooter. I think he's a better overall talent. I think he'll be a better player in the long term in the NBA. And it's not to slight Steph Castle. Cooper Flagg is just awesome. Um, but that's not what AJ DeBonsa is. AJ DeBonsa is a 6'9", 6'10" scorer that needs the ball in his hands. That is a guy that when he gets to college is looking to find a place where he can be the man, where he can be the centerpiece. Now, um, we did a podcast with AJ down in Augusta. I had lunch with his dad down there. Um, I got to know them a little bit, and I will say this: I think that the there seems to be a little bit of a narrative around him that his dad is too involved, that they're just chasing the money, that all they care about is getting every cent and every dollar out of every place that they end up going. He's gone to a couple different prep schools in his junior and senior year. He's going all across the country to go to these prep schools. And um, I do think that there is an element of truth there, but I also think that this is just what the new normal is for players at that level. And I also think that um, that the dad is what Ace is trying to do is basically insulate his son from the noise, right? He's done a really good job at making sure that AJ's focus is on the basketball, on getting better at basketball, on winning basketball games, on his player development, on making sure he doesn't miss workouts, on all of this different stuff, instead of worrying about this coach called me, that coach called me, this media member called me, this guy called me. So he's kind of worked as the de facto PR guy. And I understand why people are going to see that and kind of raise some red flags, but I don't think that this is necessarily something where it is to the level of like a LeVar Ball, right? I don't think that this is for me, this wouldn't be a red flag. It's just the way that the situation works, right? He understands what the value that his son brings to these programs, and they're going to make sure they can capitalize on that value. And in a capitalistic society, I get it. Dad's a really interesting dude, by the way. He's from Congo by way of France, came here when he was 21. He's older. I'm not gonna Ace, I'm not gonna out you for how old you are, but um he is older. AJ's mom is Jamaican. Seems like a really nice family. AJ's a really good kid, really friendly. He's able to turn on the charm when the cameras are on. He's kind of figured out how to be that part of stardom. But the bottom line is he's going to want a bag for where he goes to play, and he's going to want to be the centerpiece. He's going to want to get a lot of shots. He's going to want to be the offensive focus. He's going to have the offense built around him, and that's just not the way that it would happen at UConn. So it's not a fit. There's nothing wrong with that. Just because a great player doesn't fit at UConn doesn't mean UConn can't be successful. And just because AJ probably doesn't want to be at a place at UConn doesn't mean UConn doesn't mean AJ won't be successful, right? It just wrong fit. It is what it is. I wish him the best, and I think he's going to be a very good player. He doesn't need me wishing him the best to be able to be a successful basketball player in this business. So that's just kind of. I figured I'd put a little info out on that and just kind of talk about that a little bit because it is a question that I have gotten from UConn fans. All right. If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook. We are going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners, the viewers of the Field of 68 throughout the year. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use bonus code FIELD, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. The best part, all you need to do is deposit and bet $10 of your own hard-earned money to be eligible. Here's how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using that bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure that you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. BetMGM is going to have some fun offers available throughout the NBA playoffs. Bet insurance tokens, odds boost, and what I love, a nice parlay boost or two from time to time, as well as a ridiculous array of player prop bets for any sport that you could possibly imagine betting on. BetMGM is and always will be the king of the prop bet. So go download the BetMGM app, use the bonus code FIELD, and sign up today. And while I've got you, a quick request. The best way to support the Field of 68 content that you get for free is to engage with us. Rate and review the podcast. Like and share the YouTube videos. Tell your friends about us. It all helps in a world where the algorithm is king. And now, back to the show. Let's get into some of these recruits. Best I can tell, there are 9 guys that UConn right now is really kind of targeting and kind of going after. That number could change a little bit depending on some things that happens with some of these other recruits, and I'll talk about that in a second. But for my money, it looks like there are kind of 9 guys, and my guess, I haven't been told this by the staff specifically, but I think just reading the tea leaves, kind of want like maybe 3 of these freshmen at some point to commit, I think is the way that it would kind of work. So let's start with the guards first. Looks like there are 2 what you would call lead guards for my money. Um, we'll start with Meleek Thomas, because I think Meleek Thomas, it's not just because he's looking at UConn and a lot of people seem like it looks like it could be a UConn lean, but he's one of the most entertaining players on the circuit to watch, right? Like Tyron Stokes is Tyron Stokes and AJ is AJ and the Boozers are the Boozers, but one of the guys that always seems like he puts on a show is Meleek Thomas. He's a 5-star kid, a top 10 prospect, native of Pittsburgh. He's 6'4". He's kind of skinny, but he's tough as hell. He's a scorer first. He cut his list to 7. UConn is on that list. He is supremely talented. He reminds me a little bit of Colin Sexton, actually, in the sense that he is a bucket getter in the purest sense of the word, but he has a little bit of an awkward game. And what I mean by that is, like, you see guys that are just the purest, smoothest scorers in the world, and that's not him. There's like a violence to the moves that he makes. There's a violence to the way that he crosses the ball over, the step backs that he makes. Like, and when I mean violence, it's like there's a level of explosiveness where you're just like, whoa, what was that? Where did that come from? And he is very quick, and he is incredibly fun to watch, and he's able to get to the basket. He's kind of nuts too. And that's where the Colin Sexton thing really stands out to me. Like there's times where he'll score a bucket, he'll get to the rim, and he'll be running back on defense, clapping in somebody's face, talking to himself, right? Saying that I got this, I got this, I got you, I got you. You can't guard me, you can't stop me. Very intense, a lot of fun, that part of his game. But I think the style, like the competitiveness fits perfectly at UConn, right? The toughness fits perfectly at UConn. I do believe he cares about winning. I think that fits at UConn. The fact that he's a little bit nuts, I think that fits at UConn. The playing style specifically is a little bit weird. And what do I mean by that is, like, at his core, Meleek Thomas is a scorer. And the way that he does that is he is a tough shot maker, right? He's very good at getting to the rim. But when he's taking jump shots, there's a lot of step backs in there. There's a lot of like pull-ups. There's a lot of contested shots. And he's pretty good at making those. He doesn't create a ton of space when he's taking those shots, though. And he's got a weird release that's a little bit of a knuckleball. And I do think that a lot of that stuff can be coached out of him. I think a lot of that stuff can be developed. When you are as athletic and skilled as he is, I think that you can teach him how to be able to create a little bit more space when he takes those shots, and you can kind of teach him what an efficient look is as opposed to what a good shot for him is. But I don't know if that's necessarily the best fit for an offense that is the way that Luke and Danny and Kamani and Tom have kind of run it over the course of the last 2 years. So it's just something to kind of keep in mind. It's a little bit of a weird fit, but he is a terrific player, and he is a lot of fun to watch. And if he is at UConn, you're going to have a very, very entertaining player to be able to root on. Acaden Lewis from DC is the other point guard slash combo that they're looking at. 4-star kid. Duke, UConn, Kentucky, UNC, Auburn, Michigan, Syracuse, and Tennessee. Just cut his list to 8. He's from Sidwell Friends, which is a high academic program in DC. I believe Josh Hart went there as well. He's a scorer. He's a playmaker. He's a lefty, which is fun. He kind of blew up this winter and then ended up having a huge spring where these offers really kind of rolled in. He's quick. He's shifty. He can get into lane, finish over people. I'll be curious to see if he does end up there because he's a little different than a lot of the other point guards. But if what you're looking for is somebody in that Tristan Newton vein, in that, I guess, Aiden Mahaney vein, where you can kind of at the end of a clock put a ball in their hands and just kind of say, all right, we're going to give it to you. All of this stuff didn't work. We need you to go create something. I think Lewis can be that guy. So if he ends up committing to UConn, that's kind of the role I see him playing. When it comes to wings, Braden Burries, Darius Adams, Braylon Mullins, Nate Ament, and Tunde Yesufu seem to be like the guys they've kind of zeroed in on. I love Braden Burries, a 6'4" combo, top 15 player. He hasn't cut his list. He just got an offer from Kentucky. I think everybody on the planet is on him. He's a little bit older, but he's like physically strong. I think he finished second in the EYBL in rebounding. He's so tough. He's a shot maker. He's a really heady player, moves really well off the ball. I think he has an incredibly high floor given the way that he's built and his shot making ability. I don't know if he has a ceiling that's as high as some of these other guys because he's not the biggest dude in the world. Like 6'4" with solid length is really good to be a college guard. What that means for your long-term NBA future is a little bit of a different story, but I think he'd be a great fit at UConn. I hope they end up getting him. And I would like to see what he could do running kind of in that UConn system. Along those same lines, Braylon Mullins, another top 25 guy. I don't think that you end up getting a commitment from both Braden and Braylon. I think if it is one of those two, it is one or the other. Indiana kid, 6'5" shooter. He's more athletic and probably a better defender than I think the stereotype for an Indiana shooter would end up being. Indiana is obviously on him. Alabama, Tennessee, Purdue, Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, they're all in there. I think he just cut his list to 10, if I'm not mistaken. But he has a whole bunch of official visits scheduled, and UConn is the first visit that he is going to be taking. I mean, he's a stud, man. The staff has sent him videos of like what they did with Camp Spencer, which is a really good comparison for what he can be, for what they're going to do with Liam McNeely. I just think he's the perfect fit for what UConn wants. And if UConn can get one of those two guys, I think you're sitting pretty when it comes to this the 2025 recruiting class, at least the start of it. Darius Adams, New Jersey kid, plays at La Lumiere. I think he's got 6 officials scheduled. UConn is going to end up being the first one that he goes to. He's an interesting recruit in the sense that I did not see him play well at Peach Jam for PSA Cardinals, but I know a lot of people that I respect love what he can do. I don't think that his game is necessarily built as being a go-to guy. I think when he's at his best, he is a connective piece. He's a complementary piece. He's a guy that can play off the ball and on the ball a little bit. So I think as he moves up levels, the best situation for him will be ending up in programs and ending up in a potentially an NBA organization or a professional organization where he can be the complementary guy. And I think that would make a lot of sense at UConn. I don't think he's someone that steps in and stars as a freshman. I do think he is someone that steps in and is a good freshman that ends up developing into potentially an all-conference guy 2, maybe 3 years into his career. Good player. I think it would make a lot of sense if UConn got him. Nate Ament is probably the highest ceiling guy out of this group, and maybe the highest ceiling guy that UConn is going after. We just added a guy named Ani Umana to the Field of 68 to do recruiting stuff for us. And he says that outside of the big 3 in the class of 2025, that would be Darren Peterson, AJ DeBonsa, and Cameron Boozer. Nate Ament is the highest ceiling guy and the guy that he likes the most. 6'9", he's thin, but he's really mobile. He kind of blew up last summer, but has kept improving and kept improving and kept getting better. Um, at his size, he's a natural wing. The skills that he probably offers best long term is ability to shoot, ability to space the floor. You can run him off of screens. He's very much not a finished product, which is like a good thing in my mind because he already is so damn good. Um, you just see the upside. There's a lot of Michael Porter Jr. vibes to me in terms of, if you look at what Michael Porter Jr. is right now with the Nuggets, it's kind of as like a 3 and D guy, even though he's 6'9" and super athletic, but he's like what he is as at his core is a floor spacer and a shot maker and a guy that can create space and run off of screens. And I think that Nate Ament coming in and playing in that system just makes so much sense. And I would love to see him there. And I think what UConn has built in terms of the way their offense runs with big wings and athletic wings and shooters, it's a fit. And the last thing that I would add about Amen is if you kind of look at where the staff focused their time on the 2 recruiting weekends in July, the first Friday when Pete Sham was going on, Dan Hurley was in wherever I can't remember where the event was, but he was watching Nate Ament, and I believe Luke Murray was there as well. So I think that says a lot about the way that they're prioritizing him. The last wing, Tunde Yesufu, it's a little bit of a weird one for me because Yesufu is like a scorer. And I think his position is kind of like an undersized big wing, if that makes sense. He's 6'5" and he's strong as hell. And he's got really long arms, but he's not really a 2. Like I think he's like a 3/4. And he can guard a little bit. He can block some shots. He's tough. Like I said, he is strong. He is jacked. He looks like he's about 230 pounds of muscle. Um, but he's like a big time scorer. And he's not really a shooter, like he's a scorer. So it's a little bit of a weird fit, but that is one that I do believe the staff really likes him. So we'll see if that ends up being something that comes to fruition. He said that Kentucky is his dream school, and he just got a offer from Kentucky. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on. And then Eric. I hope I don't butcher your name. Eric Reeby and Nico Bundalo are the 2 big guys are looking at. Reeb, however you say his last name. He's down to 11 schools, and that includes UConn, Kentucky, North Carolina, Kansas. Creighton is one to keep an eye on. He's from Bullis, another DC guy, is 7-footer. Bundalo is the guy that I think is more interesting though. 6'10", lefty, played with the Serbian U18 national team in July. He's like a face-up 4-man, plays off the dribble. He's more skilled than he gets credit for. Very much a modern big, but he's tough as hell. He plays with an edge. And when you watch him, there is a lot of his personality to me that screams like that is a UConn guy. And I don't know if he's necessarily like a 5-man in the sense that you would see, like a Samson or a Klingon or a Sonogo. I think he's more of a 4 and a stretch 4, but and we haven't really seen UConn in recent years play with that like pure stretch 4 kind of a guy. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out. But um, really good player, really skilled. I think he does have significant NBA potential, and he is a guy where if you can get him into the program for 2 years, it would make a lot of sense. Chris Senac at the 5, I know he's got the offer, super talented. Goodman loves him. I don't think that the staff is recruiting him too hard, so I'm not going to talk about him too much here. Last 3 guys I do want to mention: Sebastian William Adams and Hudson Greer. Uh, UConn's been linked to them. I don't believe either of them have offers yet. Both of them are good. Uh, Greer is like, I want him to, be a better shooter. If you watch him play, and he does a lot of little things. From he's a Texas kid. His dad played at St. Mary's. He's switchable. He's tough. He's better defensively than he gets credit for. He's more athletic than he gets credit for. He has this weird way that he runs where he doesn't like, I don't know. He runs. It's very straight legged and it looks like he's about to fall over. But he's not. He needs to be a better shooter in my mind to be able to be at the level that he would take precedence over some of these other guys in this class at the wing. And then Sebastian Williams Adams, another good player, but he hasn't gotten the offer yet. I think that he's a little bit down the list. The one that's interesting, though, are the Boozer twins. And I don't believe, as of this recording, that UConn has offered them yet. I think that they are probably a Miami lean more than anything else. I think this is UConn trying to get in there and see if they can kick the tires and see if the Boozers would be interested on it, because those are two dudes that are wired the way that you would want a UConn player to be wired, right? Or that the staff would want a UConn player to be wired. They are tough. They are physical. They are cyborgs. They don't give a damn about anything other than basketball. Cam Boozer's like, he's a guy that gets a lot of the attention because, I mean, he led the EYBL in scoring and rebounding. He's a post presence. He can knock down threes. To me, he just like he's uh Kevin Love from the Cleveland Cavaliers, and that's not a knock on him. I think he's a guy that, will be a double-double machine no matter where he goes. And as he adds his three-point shot, he can really stretch defenses. Caden Boozer is the one that I think is really, really interesting, especially at UConn, because of his ability to pass, because of his ability to operate ball screens, because of how IQ he is. Like, that's the one where if UConn can find a way to get them, and I look, the Miami stuff is those kids want to stay close to home. They grew up in Miami. They grew up in Florida. That's where they went to high school. That's where they've lived their life. It's where their family is. So I get like all of the stuff about, oh, it's a Boozer. Why wouldn't they go to Duke? I don't think it's quite that simple. But with the way that they're wired, with who they are as people, with how much they care about basketball, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, I do think that getting them at UConn would be a marriage that would make a lot of sense. Like, you got to remember, these dudes have won multiple state titles in Florida, right? They won the EYBL U15. They won the EYBL U16 when Cooper Flagg was playing U16s. They won the EYBL U17s this past season when AJ DeBonsa and Tyron Stokes teamed up to try to be on the same team and try to go out and win it. They are clinical winners. And I just think that putting them in the same locker room, on the same staff, in the same organization, same program as that UConn coaching staff would be very bad for the rest of college basketball. So we'll. I don't know if if UConn will actually have a chance to get that done, but it's something I think you should keep an eye on, and something, if you are a UConn fan, you should hope would come to fruition. But listen, until that happens, this has been another episode of the Top Dogs podcast here on the Field of 68 Media Network. And hopefully soon, at some point here in the coming months, we will have a commitment to discuss. Until then, enjoy this content, and we will see you guys on the next episode.